1966, North Hollywood, Gelson's Market, Produce Department, Wednesday. Having failed in my third attempt to spring Captain Crunch from the clink, my finely tuned candy radar detects a bogey at 3 o'clock.
I'll be right back, dear.
I didn't know whose idea it was to stack lollipops and produce, but it was sure okay by me.
Hey, I'm shopping here.
The problem? Which one? I'd never finished that big lime one before Mom busted me. Cherry wasn't my favorite, but orange never failed to satisfy.
Of course, as I lay there, waiting on the ambulance, I realized that there was something in that sterno-like sear that I really dug. Sure, there was some pain. There was a lot of pain. But there was some gain in there, too. In fact, there was an indescribable fruitiness in that unforgettable fire. It was as sweet as heartbreak. Now, white bread wonder that I was, I didn't have a clue of what to do with my newfound infatuation. So for years, I left these in the hands of the practitioners of Mexican, Tex-Mex, and South American cuisines. Then came the day in 1991 when a chunky, chilied-up concoction called salsa, cooed ketchup, is the top-selling condiment in the country. Unwilling to shell out $5 for what I knew could be made for one, I started cranking out my own salsas, mostly as an excuse to make time with chilies. You know, it turns out all it takes is a little know-how, some simple tools, and a healthy dose of respect to turn these into good eats. To the uninitiated, this can be an intimidating neighborhood. Oh, sure, it looks friendly and festive, well, with all those bright colors. But you get into this world and start moving around, first thing you notice is there aren't many road signs, and what few signs you do find are often wrong. The reason? Well, a lot of folks can't even agree on what these boogers really are. And take this word, for instance. Now, I'd love to get into what that really means, but as I've said, I am not a nutritional anthropologist. And neither are you. You're the daughter of a nutritional anthropologist. That doesn't count.
That's actually the Aztec word meaning the fruit of a chili plant.
So, Deb Jr., where's Mom? Lost in the jungle again?
Anyways, the Spanish actually dropped off the second L and changed the I to an E.
Okay, so then tell me where this word came from. Pepper.
That would be Christopher Columbus, who in fact promised the Spanish crown that he was going to bring back black pepper. But when he got to the Caribbean, the only thing that came close were the pods we know as chilies. He called them peppers anyway, and it stuck. At least they're both berries.
Ah, but these are Piper nigrums, where these are actually capsicums.
Which means the bite that bites.
Oh, yes, it does, actually.
Try this one on for size.
Ah, chili, short for chili con carne, a strictly North American invention that often features chili powder.
When a recipe calls for this chili powder, it means a mixture of ground chilies and some spices like black peppers, cumin, and sometimes cinnamon.
Ah, when the recipe calls for that chili powder, it simply means dried chilies which have been ground into a fine powder.
Here's one I bet you've never even heard. It's Yucatec, for to draw breath with puckered mouth after eating chilies.
No way you get to play that word.
I most certainly can. I win.
Hey, and you moved twice. I don't want to play anymore with her anyway. Look, even if you don't care what they're called or what individual names they answer to, you can still choose your chilies wisely if you stick to a few simple rules. Okay, when it comes to chilies, size matters. Smaller chilies are always hotter than larger chilies. Okay, 9 times out of 10, long, pointy chilies are going to be hotter than round, stubby chilies. Okay, now since chilies use heat as a chemical weapon to protect a plant during its youth, immature or green chilies are hotter than red chilies 9 times out of 10. And here's the last rule. That 1 out of 10, it's a real doozy. Witness, of course, the habanero, which is small, it's round, it's red, it's even got wrinkles on it. And taste-wise, well, it's kind of like tasting a meteorite in your mouth. Of course, if you're not sure about those wrinkles and whether they're supposed to be on your chili or not, just feel the skin. If it feels at all dry or leathery, it's probably age, not design. Now, back to the heat. It's kind of... Are Scotch bonnets really that hot? Nah, but it makes for a great transitional device. Of course, before we can even talk about chili's flavor, we are going to have to deal with the fire that has no flame, capsaicin. Now, you might think this capsaicin molecule looks a lot like vanillin, the chief flavoring of vanilla. And indeed, capsaicin and vanillin are close cousins, a family tie that we will take culinary advantage of later on. But what's important right now is how this affects this. Your tongue. Now, the human tongue sports a pretty impressive array of sensors called taste buds, and each taste bud has its own receptor, and this receptor is key to fit a particular kind of molecule in food. And when that molecule comes by, say from a piece of asparagus, maybe some chocolate cake, it fits perfectly into the receptor on the taste bud. When that happens, it completes a kind of chemical circuit and sends a message up to the brain that says sweet, salty, sour, bitter, or savory. Now, the thing about capsaicin is that it doesn't care anything about locks. In fact, there hasn't been a taste bud invented that capsaicin can't pick. It just wiggles its way down into that taste bud and locks into place. And when it does, it sends a whole different kind of message to the brain. Hot! How hot? Well, that depends on how many taste buds are affected and how much capsaicin's in your capsicum. Back in 1912, a researcher at Park Davis Pharmaceutical named Wilbur Scoville became interested in the neurological effects of capsaicin. The problem is, when he tried to do controlled experiments with chilies, he was stymied by the fact that there was no scale, no way for him to know how hot one chili was compared to another one. So he decided to kind of get his lab together and make up his own capsicum heat scale. His first step, gather up a bunch of chilies. We've got a lot of chilies. His second step was to gather up a bunch of volunteers. Hi, Paul.
Hey, AB.
We aren't quite as well funded as Park Davis, so we've got one volunteer, but that'll be okay. Here was his method. He would take a chili, say a bell pepper, which really is a chili, and he would cut off a little piece of it, and he would grind that up into a paste. He would then feed this paste to each of his subjects. Then he would stand by with a container of sugar syrup, and he would see how many squirts it took of that syrup to cool the fire in their mouths. Based on that data, he would then assign that chili a certain rating based on scales of 100, and that scale became known as the Scoville heat scale. Now, we're going to begin with bell pepper. Nice and simple. Go for it.
No problemo.
Spit. No pain, no sugar syrup, 0 Scoville rating. Now, moving up, we'll try, how about one of these pepperoncinis here? That should provide just a little bit more bang for the buck. Give that a try. 1. Good. 2. 3. Spit. From this, Scoville figured that pepperoncinis average about 300 units on the Scoville scale. Child's play, right?
No. Right.
The test is young. Well, by my calculations, that last Thai pepper only got us up to about 100,000 on the old Scoville heat scale, Paul. That leaves us but one chili. This is an habanero, Paul. That means from Havana. Hey, have you noticed that the smaller the chilies get, the hotter they are?
Why, yes, I have.
Yeah, and this one isn't really very big at all, is it?
No, I can't say that it is.
The habanero averages 100,000 to 300,000 Scoville units. It's still a long way from the 6 million of pure capsaicin, which you can't even buy without a special license, but it's enough to qualify as the world's hottest pepper. Maybe this would be a good time to test some of those traditional heat reducers. You interested, Paul? How about some water? No luck. You see, that's because capsaicin is alcohol soluble, not water soluble. Hey, why don't you try a beer? Alas, beer is still mostly water. You'd have to swill pure ethyl alcohol for it to do any good. Hey, how about bread? Maybe that'll just soak that stuff out. See, the problem is once capsaicin is locked into those receptors, it really doesn't come out very easily. And you know, that stuff can do real nerve damage. All right, Paul, have some milk. But don't swallow. That could just move the burn downstream. Don't try to talk. Don't try to talk. No wonder capsaicin is registered with the FDA as a repellent for everything from voles to humans. By the way, you macho types should know that capsaicin overload can result in contact dermatitis of the tongue, which can be fatal to your taste buds. Of course, they'll grow back in a couple of weeks, so it's up to you. Come on in. You know, how you handle your pods affects the flavor and the heat of the final application. In this case, a standard tomato salsa featuring 6 Roma tomatoes, 4 cloves of garlic, 1/2 of a red onion, and a red bell pepper, which is actually a chili. There's also a tablespoon of olive oil, the juice of 1 lime, a little chili powder, or chili powder if you like, salt, pepper, and some fresh herbage. Scallions here, but cilantro or parsley will be fine too. Since there's no sugar and very little fat here, I've steered clear of the more incendiary pods, settled with 2 jalapenos, okay? Now before you poke around the pod, don protection. Capsicum is sticky stuff, molecularly speaking, and once it's on your tools, your cutting board, or your hands, it can hang around for days, can even resist soap and water. One day, about 2 hours after cutting some chilies, I put in my contact lenses. It sounded something like this. If I'd been wearing latex gloves that day, I might be able to wear contacts now. You know, I keep these around for handling raw meat, too. Buy them over the internet, but you can get them just about any drugstore, restaurant, or laboratory supply. Buy the ambidextrous models and definitely go for the talc option, or you'll spend all your time wrestling a vicious puppet. Okay, we cut. Since they're technically berries, all members of the capsicum family, including this red bell pepper, which is really a chili, share a light bulb-like anatomy, with a cluster of seeds replacing the filament. There's no surprise there. Now the seed clusters almost always attach to the side of the fruit with ribs. Now in the case of this red bell pepper, which is actually a chili, these ribs in the inner membrane don't bring anything tasty to the party, just indigestible fibers. So we remove. Just like that. That's going to leave you with nothing but the fruit, which you can then fabricate however you choose. Dice, mint, julienne, etc. Now, if you were to remove these same pieces from a hot chili, like this jalapeno, you would manipulate the heat level quite a bit. That's because capsaicin is produced, well, it's easier to show you on this, here in a set of glands. Yes, berries have glands, and it accumulates in the inner membranes, including the ribs. So, with this knowledge in mind, you definitely have some different heat options here. Start by clipping them and cutting them in half, and then getting rid of the seeds. I like to just use a teaspoon for this, just scoot them out. You don't take them out so much because they're hot, but because they're indigestible and hard and nasty. There. Now, if you were to just chop this up fine, mince it in fact, you would have all of the heat of that inner membrane. And since you would have a greater surface area, there would be more capsaicin for your taste buds to latch onto, right? Now, if you prefer, say, a fruitier approach with less heat, just take this half and press it down flat on your board. And then do the same thing you did to the bell pepper, which is actually a chili. Just shave off that membrane. Don't turn the blade down, just press it down. Now, this is a completely different animal than this. And if you were to chop it into slightly larger pieces, you'd have a salsa with 2 different effects. Heat and fruit here. You want a third option? Okay, you could roast it. No roaster? Oh, believe me, you've got a roaster. There's one of these in every kitchen. Don't think so? Just look around. You'll find it. And if you've got one of these, you have a chili roaster. Just place the pods directly in and set on your burner. Now, summon forth the BTUs. Now, the purpose of this? Burn them. Just turn and toast directly over the flame until they are black all the way around. Now, if you do not have gas burners, you're going to have to do this under the broiler, but that's okay. Just reach in about once every 5 minutes and give them a quarter turn. While you're doing this on the cooktop, though, you're going to need to turn on whatever kind of ventilation system you've got, because there is going to be a little bit of smoke. Speaking of smoke, many of the chilies that are commonly sold fresh in this country have dried and or smoked and or canned alter egos living a secret life in the ethnic food aisle. Now, they can be kind of tough to spot, though, because their names have often been changed to protect the innocent. For instance, these anchos used to be poblanos in another life. These chipotles here began as jalapenos. They're almost always canned, by the way. And these New Mexico chilies were originally Anaheims. Now, I like to keep a few bags of these around the pantry because, well, besides the fact that they bring a lot of flavor to the party, they just about keep forever. You smell that? Now that's a nice char. You know, I think we're going to need dental records to identify this one. All right, move this to the sink. Please use tongs. It's awfully hot. We're going to use the heat that is still in the peppers. Just put a bowl right on top, and in about 5 minutes, the steam is going to loosen the skin, which is going to make them much easier to peel. The texture of dried chilies ranges from crispy, crunchy to lifeboat leathery, like this New Mexico chili. And it's very tough to work on these with a knife, which is why I use scissors. To get rid of the seeds, just snip off the end, which makes sense, and turn them upside down and give them a shake. Everything will generally rattle right out. You might have to do a little massaging. There. I'm going to cut off that membrane. Now, just give everything a shake, and then snip into long strips. Now, some chilies you might only get a couple of strips, some you might get 8 to 10. It's almost like julienning, except with a pair of scissors. The smaller you get these, the more easily the flavor is going to integrate. Okay, just bundle that up into a little bouquet. It's tricky with the gloves, but trust me, you'll be glad. And then I snip them right into the salsa. Be very, very thin with them, and just there. Now, there are chili experts out there who will tell you that you should hydrate these or soak them first. But the way I figure, there's already a lot of moisture in the salsa, and there's no reason not to let that work on the chilies. That way, all of the flavor is going to stay in the bowl and not in the soak water. Now, give this at least an hour to hydrate before you serve. Of course, you really ought to do that anyway, because it really takes time for the chilies to get to know the other flavors in the bowl. Okay, roaster's ready. There we go. Ooh, nice and soft. Now, to get the charred skin off, either rub these between a couple of layers of paper towel or just wash it off, which is what I do. Now, besides softening the meat and sweetening the flavor, skinning cuts down on the grassy flavor that young or green chilies bring to the party. Now, once you've got most of it off, basically just tear off the end and open it up. That way you can get most of the seeds out. Now, you can't really separate the membrane from the meat. You can take off the ribs, but the membrane's going to stay. So these are going to be hotter than they would be if we had actually cut them raw and skinned them out. There. Now, you can mash this, or you can mince it up, grind it into a paste, whatever you want to do. I like to just chop it up roughly. That way you get different levels of flavor. And straight into the salsa. Of course, the really nice thing about roasting is that roasting does create sugar. And sugar, of course, is going to help to kind of cool off the chemical fire. Speaking of, how many chilies do I have in this? It'll be fun. So what we have here is a single salsa featuring 4 distinct strata or layers of chili heat and flavor. Okay, we've got the high heat of the minced chili that was raw, membrane on. Then we've got the fruitier, chopped raw chili that had the membrane removed. Then we've got the roasted chili and the dried chili, which has rehydrated very nicely. Of course, you should feel free to mix and match your pods at will. as well as how you treat them. You're going to have to experiment. Yeehaw! Maybe I should have counted those chilies a little bit better. We hope we've inspired you to add a little heat to your kitchen today. Of course, chilies aren't just about heat. As we said, there are many layers of flavor tucked away in these little pods. Whatever you do, don't restrict yourself to the obvious applications. Salsa's fine, but hey, this is dessert. And those are indeed chilies. Simmer a can of canned pineapple bits with a finely chopped habanero chili and a few sprigs of fresh mint for about 5 minutes. Cool thoroughly, then remove the mint. Meanwhile, fry up some tortilla wedges in corn oil until crisp and puffy. Drain and dust liberally with sugar. Then dig in. Oh, and you can have some ice cream on the side if you like. The sugar and the habanero get together, cancels out some of the heat, all you get is fruit. That's what I call, you know. See you next time.